Subscribe, or it will find you in your sleep.
I never really believed in ghost stories. At least, I didn't until last night. It was around 3 a.m., and I was alone in my kitchen, quietly making myself something to eat. You know that feeling you get when someone is standing right behind you, even though you're absolutely sure you're alone? Yeah, I felt it. While I was pouring myself a drink, something caught my eye, a dark shadow quickly slipping behind the wall near the cabinet. We have a small mirrored cabinet there, angled just enough for me to see clearly around that corner. But when I checked, of course, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Before I could even shake off that eerie feeling, I felt something gently tug at my shirt collar. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I finished preparing my food as quickly as possible and hurried back to my room, heart racing. You might think it was just paranoia. Believe me, I wanted to think so too. But then, it got worse. At this point, I knew for sure I was the only person awake. My sisters were fast asleep, my brother was out, my mom was at work, and my dad was deeply asleep in his room. So every single sound outside my door couldn't possibly be any of them. After sitting in my room for a couple of anxious minutes, I decided to quickly put my plate away in the kitchen. But what I saw next made it impossible to deny that something else was in the house with me. Let me explain. I have a bit of an obsessive habit. Every single night, I do a 5-step routine before I sleep. First, I check the balcony door, closed and locked. Second, I make sure no unnecessary electronics are plugged in. Third, I confirm all the fans and lights in the living room are off. Fourth, I double-check the kitchen sink and stove dials, slightly turning each knob to make sure they're off. And finally, I make sure the main door is locked tight. That night, I did exactly that before heading to my room. Everything was normal. But when I came out just moments later to return my plate, something had changed drastically. In our living room, we have a small cabinet filled with storage boxes. This cabinet has been sitting flush against the wall for years, literally years, and it's never been moved. Ever. My mother would absolutely freak if someone left it out of place. But this time, as I walked past it, I stopped cold. The cabinet had been moved a foot away from the wall. I stood frozen in horror. There was no way someone could have moved it silently, and no reason anyone would even attempt it at this hour. Now, think about it. Would you have checked what was behind that cabinet, or would you run straight back to your room? I decided to move it back, and that's when things became undeniable. I rechecked everything again, my routine of 5 steps. But this time, the first thing I noticed was the balcony door. It was slightly ajar, and worse, the latch had been flipped upward unlocked. Gravity couldn't have done that, and no one in my house would ever leave it like this. I searched every room, every corner, desperately hoping I'd find one of my siblings or a logical explanation, but I found absolutely no one. No intruders, nowhere to hide. Just me and something I couldn't see. At this point, it was no longer paranoia. It was real. But if you think that's scary, just wait until you hear what happened the next morning. Because what I encountered in broad daylight was even more terrifying. The next morning, I woke up still feeling shaken from what happened the night before. I tried convincing myself that it had all been a strange coincidence, just my imagination running wild in the dark. But that uneasy feeling clung to me, refusing to let go. I decided to head downstairs to check the mailbox. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, the light directly above me began to flicker erratically. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That's so cliché. Believe me, I thought the same. But something just didn't feel right. Lights don't normally flicker like that, do they? I glanced around nervously. Every single apartment door along the hallway was shut tight. Even the heavy stairwell door at the end of the hall was firmly closed. Everything looked normal, but felt off. And then I had an idea. Maybe I should record this, I thought. Proof I wasn't losing my mind. As I turned my camera on, capturing the empty hallway, something happened. Right there, behind me, a door slammed shut. Loud. Hard. There was no wind in the hallway. No windows open. Absolutely no logical reason for it to slam like that. And trust me, these doors are heavy. It wasn't some random gust of wind. This was deliberate. Shaking, I quickly grabbed the mail and returned upstairs. I was only gone 3 minutes, just enough for one song to finish playing through my earphones. But when I stepped out of the elevator, everything seemed completely normal again. Quiet, calm, as if nothing had happened. What would you have done? Would you have just brushed it off as a coincidence? By now, I was seriously scared. And that's when my cousin proposed something even crazier. Let's visit that ghost town everyone's been talking about, he said. I laughed nervously at first, thinking he was joking. But soon enough, 7 of us, cousins and friends, climbed into a van and headed out, half excited, half terrified. Rumors about the town were chilling. Relatives had seen a mysterious woman and a little girl in a dress wandering the roadside. Their phones would suddenly lose signal, batteries would drain completely, and some cars would inexplicably stop working altogether. We were skeptical at first, joking around as we drove toward the place. None of us really knew exactly when we'd reach it, but then we crossed this old bridge and everything changed. A thick fog appeared out of nowhere, completely swallowing the road. Our laughter died instantly. The atmosphere in the van turned heavy, tense. We silently knew we'd arrived. We parked just outside the ghost town, turning the car off and sitting quietly, staring into the dark, abandoned houses. It felt like we were intruders, being watched from every shadowed window. After only a few minutes of eerie silence, our driver suddenly turned the van back on and drove us straight out of there. What happened? We asked him. But he wouldn't answer. His face had turned pale, almost sickly. Finally, parked at a nearby gas station, he confessed what he saw. A little girl in the darkness behind one of those houses, slowly walking toward the van. The cashier at the gas station overheard us talking. He wasn't surprised. He calmly said he'd seen the girl too, many times. And then he suggested something strange. If you really want proof, wash your van right now. Clean everything, windows, mirrors, sides, doors. Then go back into town. You'll see. Stupidly, we agreed. We scrubbed the van spotless, dried every inch inside and out. Then, after calming our nerves, we drove straight back into the ghost town, this time parking right in the center. For 20 long minutes, 7 adults sat silently holding hands, peering into the darkness. Nothing happened until I saw her, a small figure in the distance. At first, it seemed she was limping or crawling. We all leaned forward, staring in horror as she slowly stood upright. Then, without warning, she vanished, dissolving into darkness. Instantly, something slammed into the driver's side door. Loud, aggressive. Then, scratching, crawling noises beneath us, distinct thumps directly under my feet. Someone, something, was beneath our van. Another thump, this time from the back bumper. And then, a clear handprint appeared on the rear window. That was enough. We drove out, panic-stricken, straight back to the gas station. We all jumped out of the van, and there they were, fresh handprints. Tiny fingerprints. A small footprint pressed into the back bumper. The marks wouldn't wipe away. They stayed there, as if permanently etched, no matter how hard we tried to clean them. Terrified, we drove to a crowded Walmart parking lot, unwilling to risk bringing whatever this was back home. We abandoned the van there overnight. The marks finally vanished by morning, but not our memories. I promise you, I will never return to that ghost town again. And after hearing this story, would you?